Lesson 19, Section 2. This presentation will be talking about verbal adjectives and the gerundive. Just as an adjectival noun is a noun that has been made out of an adjective, a verbal adjective is an adjective that has been made out of a verb. Some examples in English. Tired. It's the verb tire plus ed. Admirable. It's the verb admire plus this able suffix, which means able to be admired. Greek has verbal adjectives that perform both of these functions and more. This is the first kind of verbal adjective we're going to look at. To form verbal adjectives in Greek, one typically takes the verb stem and adds the appropriate ending, in this case this tos ending. So let's take a verb like poiea. We're dropping our omega to get our stem, but that's actually going to change just a little bit. It's going to be slightly irregular, and we're going to add the tos, te, ton endings. It becomes an adjective with different endings for the different genders, of course, and this means made. So similar to our tired example from before. Another verb, akuo, drop the omega to get the stem. We're going also to add this little sigma in between. This is once again kind of irregular. We can't really predict it. And then we're going to add our ending, tos, te, ton, and the different genders to get able to be heard, like our admirable from before. So we had our verb akuo, I hear, I listen, and we make it into a verbal adjective by adding tos, and we get able to be heard. We're going to see a different example of how verbal adjectives can be used in Greek. Take a verb like prasa, I do or act, and we're going to remove the omega just like usual, and we are going to see another change here too from the sigma sigma to the kappa and add our normal ending. We're also going to add an alpha in front of it. This is known as the alpha privative. Basically means makes it mean the opposite of its normal meaning. So this is not done, but rather not done or undone. That's the first of the meanings that this can have. But it can also mean not able to be done. And finally, a third meaning that we haven't seen before, not doing anything. So very different in this third case. So these are the basic three uses of this kind of verbal adjective. We take a verb and we add this ending, and it makes the verb mean made, or it can make the verb mean able to be, made, heard, done. And thirdly, we might find it meaning making or hearing, or in this case, not doing. In Greek, there's another type of verbal adjective, sometimes called the gerundive, that has no parallel in English, though it does have a parallel in Latin. It is formed in the same way as the verbal adjectives we just looked at, except that an epsilon is inserted in the ending. That tos, te, ton gets an extra epsilon in it. For instance, we just looked at the verbal adjectives poietos, made, and akoustos, able to be heard. To get the gerundive, we're going to add an epsilon right here. It's going to appear in all of the different genders. Poieteos, poietea, poieteon, etc. Such an adjective indicates that the action of the verb from which it derives, like poiea, I make or do, and akuo, I hear or listen, that action should or must be performed. So if we're describing something as poieteos, it has to be done or made. If we're describing something as akousteon, for instance, it has to be or should be heard. The gerundive may be used in either a personal construction or an impersonal construction. Here we're going to get some nuances. So let's look at a verb like therapeo, I serve. We get our word therapy from this. And to get our verbal adjective, we're going to drop the omega like usual and add, in this case, no special letters, thankfully, just the teos, tea, teon for our gerundive, that is, something or someone has to be or should be served. Now, let's say we want to say therapeuteoi esin hoiteoi. So it's the gods that should be served. This is a verbal adjective, therapeuteoi, formed from our verb therapeo, and it is describing the gods. Moreover, it agrees, as we would expect, with the thing we're describing, hoi theoi. This is what is called the personal construction, because we're directly describing the person, place, or thing that should be whatever this action is. But there's another way to do it. Therapeuteon estin tous theus. We now have what could be called a sort of impersonal construction. We're describing nothing in particular. This therapeuteon is in the nominative. It's neuter. It's describing like an it. And what it is, or who it is that has to be served, is actually going to go into the accusative. So we're almost saying something like, it is necessary that the gods be served, or something like that. That too is an impersonal construction. It is necessary. What is necessary? No one really knows. It is raining. It snows. We're not really describing anything in particular. We are using what is called an impersonal construction. So in addition to, here we have the neuter singular, therapeuteon estin. We might also see therapeutea estin, which is the neuter plural. Of course, estin, the verb there, if we use it, is not going to change, because if you remember, plural neuter subjects almost always take verbs in the singular. Anyway, they mean the same thing. This is just the impersonal way to say the same thing that we set up above. The gods should be served. We have really no parallels for these constructions in English, so we simply have to understand what's going on in the Greek and the alternatives available to us. If it is necessary to indicate the agent by whom the action should or must be done, the dative case, occasionally the accusative, is used. So for instance, if you want to say that we should serve the gods, therapeuteon tous theus, this says the gods should be served, but if it is we who must serve the gods, then you would put the dative version of that personal pronoun. Therapeuteon heimin, dative, tous theus. We might see this also in the personal construction. Therapeuteoi esin heimin hoi theoi. The gods must be served by us. We must serve the gods. We're going to continue. Till now, the verbs we have been considering have all been transitive verbs. This is a new term. That is, they are verbs that take objects, take direct objects, in this case, in the accusative. Intransitive verbs, that is, verbs that do not take objects, and verbs that take objects in the genitive or dative must be used using that impersonal construction that we saw. So an intransitive verb in English would be something like come or go. We can't go something. That would be an intransitive verb. A transitive verb would be take or give. We can take something. We can give something. Transitive verbs are actions acting upon objects. Intransitive verbs are just actions. Going, coming. Sleeping, for instance, would be another intransitive verb. So anytime you have a verb like that you want to use the gerundive of, that you want to say this action has to be done, we have to use the impersonal construction. We also have to use the impersonal construction that we saw when the verb takes a genitive or a dative. Like for instance, pisteo, I trust. Whom you trust, or what you trust, goes into the dative. So if we wanted to say that something or someone is to be trusted, we would have to use this impersonal construction. Let's look at another example. Aku, we know how to form the gerundive of this. We drop the omega, and we add that sigma. We add the teon. So, acus teon este soi mu. Here, what are we saying exactly? Well, acus teon este is our little impersonal gerundive. So something has to be heard or listened to. What is that something or someone? It's the mu. It's the mu, because when we listen to someone, that someone goes into the genitive case. And here we have this soy, which tells us that it is you that I must be listened to by. You must listen to me. For further reading, you can look at pages 193 to 194 for the gerundive, and vertible adjectives in TOS you'll find on page 220. Thank you.